In 1982, China was still recovering from decades of political turmoil and economic collapse under Mao Zedong. Millions lived in poverty, industries were outdated, and much of the country struggled to modernize. As the government searched for ways to rebuild the economy and strengthen state revenue, one industry quietly became more important than almost any other: tobacco. That decision would eventually create one of the most powerful and controversial corporations on Earth. The Chinese state established what is now known as China National Tobacco Corporation, or simply China Tobacco. Outside China, the company's name is barely recognized, yet its products are linked to around 2.4 million deaths every year, with experts warning the number could continue climbing for decades. Despite generating staggering amounts of money, China Tobacco rarely appears beside corporations like Apple, Microsoft, or Amazon in global business discussions, mainly because it operates as an extension of the Chinese state itself. To understand how this happened, the story goes back to Durham in 1880. Tobacco businessman James B. Duke had just learned that a revolutionary cigarette-making machine was finally operational. Until then, cigarettes were rolled by hand, limiting production. The new machine could produce hundreds every minute, completely transforming the industry. Duke immediately realized cigarettes could become a global product. He searched for the biggest market possible and focused on China, the most populated nation on Earth. At the time, cigarettes were not yet common there. Many believed Chinese consumers would never fully embrace smoking in that form. Duke thought otherwise. He believed habits could be created, and history proved him right. His company, British American Tobacco, rapidly spread across China, flooding the market with cigarettes and overpowering local manufacturers. Within a few decades, tobacco had become deeply rooted in Chinese society. Then came the Communist Revolution in 1949. By then, smoking was already part of everyday life in China. Mao himself was a notorious chain smoker who reportedly dismissed health concerns about tobacco. He once joked that smoking helped with breathing exercises. Cigarettes were so culturally accepted that communist soldiers were often promised tobacco alongside food and shelter during wartime. After the revolution, the communist government expelled foreign tobacco companies and nationalized the entire industry. Later, Deng Xiaoping reorganized the sector into a centralized state monopoly. That monopoly would evolve into modern-day China Tobacco. Today, China consumes nearly half of all cigarettes, smoked worldwide approximately 2.4 trillion cigarettes every year. More than 300 million Chinese citizens smoke, and almost every cigarette sold in the country comes from China Tobacco. The company controls nearly every stage of the business: tobacco farming, manufacturing, advertising, imports, exports, and nationwide distribution. But what truly makes the company unique is that it also plays a major role in regulation. In many countries, tobacco companies and public health agencies are enemies. In China, they are closely connected. China Tobacco operates under the same state structure, responsible for overseeing smoking policies. That means the organization profiting from cigarette sales can also influence warning labels, advertising rules, taxation, and smoking bans. The profits generated by this system are extraordinary. In 2024 alone, China Tobacco reportedly delivered more than $223 billion in taxes and profits directly to the Chinese government. In some years, tobacco revenue has represented roughly 6 to 7% of the central government's total income, enough to rival the size of China's defense spending. Some Chinese smokers even joke that every cigarette they smoke helps finance another aircraft carrier or warship. This financial dependence has created a massive conflict of interest. The government benefits enormously from cigarette sales, making aggressive anti-smoking reforms politically and economically difficult. As a result, many tobacco control policies that succeeded elsewhere have struggled in China. Across much of the world, smoking rates fell after governments introduced graphic warning labels, public smoking bans, high tobacco. Meanwhile, the health consequences continue growing. Researchers estimate that tobacco-related diseases killed around 68 million people in China between 1990 and 2023. Every year, another 2.5 million people die from illnesses linked to smoking, including lung cancer, heart disease and strokes. Hospitals across the country continue treating enormous numbers of smoking-related patients, while younger generations are still being exposed to tobacco culture from an early age. In many Western countries, rising healthcare costs eventually pushed governments into legal battles against tobacco companies. China's healthcare system works differently. Much of the financial burden falls on families rather than directly on the state, reducing pressure for major reform. China did officially join the World Health Organization anti-tobacco treaty in 2005 and promised stronger action against smoking. But many reforms were weakened, delayed, or blocked before they could have a major impact. Nationwide smoking bans failed to fully materialize. Graphic warning labels remained limited. Local anti-smoking campaigns often faced resistance from officials tied to tobacco revenue. At the same time, China Tobacco expanded beyond China's borders. The company now exports cigarettes to more than 125 countries and has increased its influence across Asia and Africa. In some regions, it reportedly works through complicated networks of distributors and subsidiaries to enter new markets. It has also funded schools and development projects inside China, with some schools allegedly named after cigarette brands themselves. Critics, journalists, and public health advocates inside China have tried to challenge the company's influence for years. However, under Xi Jinping, activism and independent advocacy have become far more restricted. Organizations and individuals who once openly criticized China Tobacco now face increasing pressure and censorship. Today, China Tobacco stands as one of the clearest examples of a government financially dependent on a harmful product. It is a system where the state profits from addiction while simultaneously regulating it. And unless major political, cultural, and public health changes occur, the human cost of smoking in China is likely to keep rising well into the future. For millions of people, the price of that system will not be measured in money, but in lives.